Hello, everyone. We're going to talk about writing and submitting a successful Access Maximize proposal. My name is Ken Hackworth. I'm a staff member at the Pittsburgh Supercomputing Center, but I oversee the allocation process for Access. So let's begin. Since this is an Access function, we want to point out there's a code of conduct. There you can see the URL for the code of conduct site, and you can read that in more depth. But we just want to say that we want to have an inviting, comfortable atmosphere here for the talk. If you find any concerns with this talk or anyone on this webinar, there is information below there or on that site if you want to report that. We're going to have a little overview of what we'll talk about today. Talk about the access allocation opportunities. We'll talk about guidelines for an access maximized request. We'll talk about other documents that are necessary in a submission for a maximized request. We'll talk about the review criteria, the overview of proposals, the different request types and actions that are possible. We'll talk about the access opportunities and those allocations. Also talk about access available resources. We'll talk about the procedures for submitting a maximized request, and we'll go into a sample of the submission. We'll talk about why requests are reduced and a little bit about the metrics of allocations. Here you'll see a list of the different access opportunities that are available. We're mostly going to focus on the far right, the green section of maximize, but we do want to talk about that there are some other opportunities: explore, discover, and accelerate. These are smaller opportunities. They are awarded in credits. Explore at 400,000 credits, discover at 1.5 million credits, and accelerate up to 3 million credits. And then you can exchange those for the resource or resources that you would like to have. As they get larger, you're going to require more information, as Explore is just an extended abstract. Discover would be an abstract with a one-page proposal. Accelerate would be an abstract along with a three-page proposal. But let's talk about maximize. These are large-scale research projects. These are going to require multiple documents, CVs, my proposals, scaling code performance document. These are renewed once a year. We're moving into a biannual submission period instead of quarterly as we have done in the past. And we will, they have a panel merit review of these proposals. So an outline of the main document, or the proposal as we would call it. The first section is the research objectives. The second would be the computational methodology, these application or codes that you'll use. The third section would be application efficiencies. The fourth section would be the computational research plan. The fifth section being the justification for the service units or the terabytes for storage that you're requesting. And then the sixth section would be the additional considerations, and we'll detail those as we go. So let's talk about the research objectives. We talk a little bit about traditional proposals, and those are probably 95% of our proposals. We also like to mention community proposals, gateways, or large collaborative projects. But mostly these traditional projects, all in all, they're pretty much the same at this section. You're going to want to tell us about the science here. It's not where you would repeat your NSF or your NIH proposal, attaching it here. This is a section, a page or so about the science that you want to do and you plan to do, and then you'll detail that as you go with your other sections. If you have a supporting grant, NSF, NIH, DOE, DOD, some support for your research, you won't have to go into great details here. As the reviewers will see that you have a supporting grant for the research, they're not going to be judging the science of this. However, if you do not have a supporting grant, this is where you're going to want to detail a little bit more about the science that you're going to want to do, because this review panel is going to review the science as well. Second section, these computational methods, this is where you're going to start telling us about the codes that you may use. Maybe they will be third-party codes. Maybe they will be homegrown codes. If they're third-party codes, here's where you want to go into some detail why you're using this software over that software. Maybe you want to use Gaussian instead of NWChem, and some details of that, and why you're going to exploit this software to best perform for your research that you're planning to do. If you have homegrown codes, though, you're going to want to go into a little bit more detail why you took the time to write this code yourself, why it's more specific. You're taking advantage of the cores, the GPUs, the nodes, whatever. But please detail this homegrown code, why you're going to do this. And here's where you're going to want to start detailing the storage needs of your project. We're going to want to know, the size of code, the documents, the file sets. Are you storing lots of little files, lots of big files? Are you going to move these? Is it going to be a collection of data? Whatever it may be, you want to start to tell us about this so that you can justify this later, the storage. The third section is application efficiencies. And here's where you're going to want to detail the testing that you've done on the resource or resources that you're requesting, the codes that you're using, again, whether they're third-party codes or they're homegrown codes, so that you can explain to the reviewers how these best will work, the efficiency of these codes on these resources. There is an additional document that's required for a maximized request, code performance and scaling document, where you can better detail with plots and graphs your code testing and all. Showing, starting at one core or one node and scaling up to many cores, many nodes or GPUs, so that you can show that your code runs efficiently, it scales well, or maybe it doesn't, but you want to detail this here. One thing that we want to talk about, though, in this code performance and scaling document, as well as this section, is just because you may be using a third-party software, say VASP or something, and you show, oh, well, here on the VASP website, it runs really well, and you repeat that. That doesn't mean that you can run the software very well on the resources. So it has to be your scaling and testing and showing that it's efficient use. You are using them efficiently on the resources. This could be a cause for a decline or a rejection of the proposal. And again, here we talk about the efficiencies of storage. So you want to start talking about your storage algorithms and all. You're going to be moving large data sets. What is your plan for scaling to these large data sets? So just start to continue to detail this so the reviewers know what your plans are for storage as well. In the fourth section, this is your computational research plan. Use the work that you're going to be using this software, your homegrown code for. You're going to want to detail how many runs you're going to make, how many time steps you're going to do, how many the wall clock that you're going to be using, you're going to do it 20 times instead of 50 times or 50 times instead of 20. You want to detail why you're doing this. You want to talk about, well, I'm going to run at 1 femtosecond over 2 femtoseconds or whatever the case may be, but you're going to want to detail. Do not assume that the reviewers would know your time scale, your time step. Is it in water? Is it in alcohol? Whatever the case may be, you're going to want to detail. So we have some example here of a traditional proposal. A bad example would be, oh, we're going to have a dozen or so important proteins under various conditions. That's pretty general. The reviewers probably would think this is not ready. The details aren't there to judge this, to make a recommendation for an award. But you see, a good example is maybe 7 proteins under these important each protein will require so many runs and varying parameters, and this is where we talk about the time steps, and is it based in water or alcohol or whatever it may be. So you do these things better. In community proposals, gateways we might call them, bad example would be, oh, the gateway is going to let users run NAMD on access resources. Well, that's pretty general. It doesn't show that you have a big hold or an understanding of what these users will do on this gateway. But better yet, you're going to say, oh, maybe the gateway allows users to run NAMD jobs on 128 processors on this problem size that are limited to in whatever fashion. This would be very detailed because you're getting an allocation to then provide access to communities that we want to make sure that you have a handle on their activity on this research. The fifth section is the justification. So you've done all these prior sections of methods, your scaling, your performance and all. Now you really just have to pull these together in a sort of a summary. Here's what we've done. We've explained in these sections. So project A is going to use so many runs on this resource for so much memory, so many wall time, and that's going to be so many service units. And project 2 is going to be this amount of runs for this amount of cores for this amount of wall time. and that's going to be so many service units, and then storage listed in there as well. And just a nice table that breaks this down that matches what you've said earlier. So on the submission form, you're going to put an overall number that you need. Through the prior sections of this proposal, you're going to talk about your methods and your performance and all, and you're going to want to start to detail these different projects or sections of your research. And then in this fifth section, you're going to want to pull that together so that the reviewers see, oh, okay, they have a very well organized, that they're going to use X amount of service units for project A, Y amount of service units for project B. This all totals up to the numbers that they have been repeating in their submission form, as well as the earlier sections, and it all matches up. When these don't match up, then the reviewers have to go back and do some checking, and then they have some doubts in their mind about, is this the best proposal? Was it well prepared? And we don't want that. So this fifth section, as well as doing the others, pull this all together, and this should get you moving along well. In the sixth section, this is where the additional review considerations and additional information we'd like. So we'd like to know about your team. Is your team prepared to do these runs? Do you have supporting grants? And that's something you would put in your submission form. You'd list your supporting grants. If you do, then what is the team supported to do this research? Using millions and millions of hours on these resources can take effort from the team, and we want to know that the team has the support. Actually, to support the team, to run these jobs, and also, do you have the experience? So list the experience. You may have postdocs, graduate students, undergraduate students, whatnot, some experience of this testing. Also, we want to know a little bit about your local computing environment. Why could you not do it at your home institution? Why you're coming to ACCESS, and this may be, we're just at a small college and we don't have larger scale HPC resources, so we're coming here. Or we do, but we find that we need to use these resources because of this element of the resource. You also want to list if you have access to other resources. Maybe you have a DOE grant, maybe you have another ACCESS grant, maybe you have an allocation on the TAC Frontera machine. Whatever it may be, you want to be very transparent with your allocations on other resources, as these reviewers are going to want to say, well, why do they need ACCESS when they already have Frontera or DOE resources and all? You want to explain this in some detail, why you need these resources as opposed to already having other access. And then we talk about special needs, and this is where if you have certain data needs, maybe you need large scale data, maybe you're going to have collections that are going to be accessed by others or planned to. Maybe you have special runs, maybe you're preparing to do some special runs for the SC conference for the Gordon Bell Award. Maybe you do special runs through the year for other functions. You want to detail these needs for reservations on machines or special runs or whatever it may be, but definitely detail that if you do have these special needs, so the resource providers are aware of these needs. And then we also talk about these considerations for the community users. If it is a gateway allocation, we'd want to know what your management plan is. How are you going to support this community when they do come? To build it, they will come, and they will. We see a lot of large gateways that have thousands of users, and they have been able to manage these very well. But you need to also let us know how you will manage this. How will you let your users grow? How will you move them onto their own allocations if they grow too large? So just different things about this, explaining the details of the management plan. If you have a renewal, as some of you will, you're going to want to add a progress report. It will be required on a renewal. If you're upgrading from, say, an Accelerate, a Discover, even an Explore, you'll be renewing this as a renewal into Maximize, and you'll require to have a progress report. A progress report is we always hope that there's lots of positive progress, and sometimes there isn't. So we would like to know, as well as you've made publications, you've presented at conferences and all that, but there could be times where the prior allocation wasn't used in the manner or as much as you had hoped. And there are times where you have maybe you've moved labs, you've moved institutions, you've had a health issue. There was this pandemic thing that caused a lot of delays in research, but detail that. The reviewers are going to read this and they're going to say, oh, well, this group had an allocation last year of so much, but they only use 50, 60, 70%, and we don't understand why. They're back asking for that same amount or more, and it's hard for us to judge, should we give them that much? Because their prior year, they weren't able to show that they could use it. And they may cut you based on this lack of knowledge. So again, the transparency of the situation is definitely key for the reviewers to make a decision. And then other documents, you know, with a submission, you'll have to have a CV for every PI and co-PI, 3 pages. There's a section where you can add your publications, not including the actual publication, but the listing of the publications. You can add a separate document for special requirements or references if your 10-page document is too large. Anything that you find that you may need the additional document. And then this would be where you would add the code performance and scaling document as well. So once you've done that, you've successfully made your submission, made your request, you've uploaded all your documents, then we're going to go and then start working to have this get to the peer review panel's queue to start reviewing. And so a little bit about the review criteria. And we talked about these sections, but they're going to look at these 3 sections: the appropriateness of methodology. And this is where you've detailed, hopefully, you're going to use this resource with this software with these methods. You're going to use this this homegrown software and why you're going to use that. You're going to use VAST because of this particular reason, or Gaussian or NAMD or whatever it may be, and these algorithms and the methods of doing this. Then we're going to look at the appropriateness of the research plan. Is your plan really feasible? Is it possible? Do you have the people to do these runs? Are you running in the right time scale, the right amount of times? Why 50 runs over and not 20 runs? These need to be detailed. It can't just be fairly loose. They want to know why you're going to do these. Then the last part is the efficient use of the resources. There's a competition for these resources, a lot of requests, a lot of research groups out there, and you want to make sure that you're going to make best use of these resources and use them efficiently. So this is where the code performance and scaling document, where you've detailed that you've done the testing, that you have done the tests on the resources or some resource that's very similar, and you're able to make efficient use of these resources. These access projects, the Maximize project, they're sort of like a bank account of an allocation. They're renewed every year, replenished every year. You can extend them if needed, but not all the time. You want to make sure that, you know, as you draw on these, you could supplement if you get ahead of schedule of your plan of usage, but these are renewed each year for a 1-year process. These projects, these evolve over years. We have some people that have submitted year after year after year for the last 10, 15, 20 years. We continue to see them submitting each year. But you want to make sure that, you know, again, the progress report is definitely explaining the details of the progress that you've made. You've used the allocation as planned, and you're back asking for more to continue to do the research. On eligibility, essentially staff, faculty, research at an institution or even an individual is eligible to be a PI. Postdoc researchers are eligible to be a PI at a Maximize. Graduate students are not, but there's one thing nice in the ACCESS program is that we will allow graduate students to be their PI on an Explore allocation. And they have used their advisor as a co-PI with an advisor's letter stating support. But otherwise, they could not be a PI at a Maximize or an Accelerator or Discover. We also support high school projects. They can apply as well, but undergraduates, of course, could not be a PI. So most people are eligible. If you have any concerns about this, please let us know. And there is a page out there detailing all of this. So just an overview of the actual request that you'll make. We'll talk about the web forms that you'll submit, ask multiple questions, abstracts, titles, keywords, things like that. You have a chance to add your users, upload your documents, supporting grants and all in a PDF format. There are page limits for the different documents and they'll be listed there. These are all reviewed by experts in the same field of science. We have a team of reviewers. We will assign 3 reviewers to each proposal to review. These proposals are submitted. So this current submission window is open until January 31st. It will open up on December 15th. We will assign the proposals quickly after that. The review team will meet in early March with allocation notifications going out by March 15th for awards starting April 1. And then this would repeat biannually. So this would repeat over the summer. You could submit if you want to pass on this time, or you need to submit because you possibly declined. Then we would go through this again, reviews in September, and awards would start in October. There's no size limit to these allocations as long as you can justify the need for the resources that you're asking. So if it's 5 million or it's 50 million, if you can justify it, then you can request it. I'm not going to go into great detail about the resources that are available, but there's some list here. There's a bunch that are CPU related. Most everybody has that, the core nodes able to be allocated. There's many with GPU. There's some that are larger than others. There's large memory. A few resources have this. There's the VMs. Several resources have this, and then they all have some version of storage, but there's a standalone resource, Open Storage Network, or OSN, that has storage, the standalone storage. The one thing I do want to point out here is Stampede 3 is a new resource. This will be available starting in early 2024, but it's available for requests at this time. So you may not have a chance to test on that machine, but if you've tested on these others, you make your best assumptions that you can run on Stampede 3 if you ran on Stampede 2 in the past or something like that. So let's just get started with sort of a sample of getting to the access allocation pages and making a submission. So on the upper right corner, you will see the login page, and here's where you will authenticate with your CI login. If you had an Exceed ID prior, that will work here. If not, you would want to have to create a new one if you are new. Otherwise, you would log in through this page. Username, password, there's a Duo login. You will have to get through that part. Once you're through that, you will get to the page, access page. Now you can start looking at your allocations. You can edit your profile, upload your publications, ORCID integration, whatnot. But we're going to start with the manage allocations and start a submission there. So we're going to make a request here, and you'll see the different available opportunities. So for this example, you see Explore, Discover, Accelerate, and then Maximize at the bottom, which will open on December 15th and stay open until January 31st. So we're going to start here. We're going to make a submission, and we'll start the process. So the first part is it's going to ask you for a title, an abstract, keywords, field of science, primary, and a secondary field of science as possible. You have an option to add additional people to your submission, co-PIs, allocation managers, and whatnot. And then you would just have to know their access ID. So have that ready ahead of time, and then you can add them as you go. Again, if it's a co-PI, you'll have to have a CV for them. So let's add that. We'll move on to the next page, and this is where it'll start talking about supporting grants. So if you have a supporting grant, that's wonderful. If you don't, it doesn't make you ineligible. You just have to detail a little bit more about the science in your proposal. Here's just an example. Ask for the funding agency, the titles, the PI name, start date, end date, signed fields of science, and then it's asked you about the award amount and what percentage of that award amount will be used to do the research on the computational machines, the resources and all. And so I make an example here. So I say that we have an award amount of $1 million, and I'm going to apply 50% of that is going to go towards here. 50% or 500,000 will be applied to fund the research team's efforts on the computational resources. So this gives the reviewers understanding that you have sufficient funds for, say, a large request, and your team is ready and they have the funds to fund the work that they're going to do. So definitely detail that so we understand. And again, if you don't have a supporting grant, it's okay. You're not ineligible, but you'll have to definitely detail it more. And will have to be some consideration of your team's experience and all that you'll detail in that sixth section of your main document. And if you have more than one supporting grant, you can list them all here. We just definitely want to know. So once we do the supporting grant, we would move on and we would upload some documents. So there's a main document, there's a CV for the PI, there's a code performance and scaling document, there's a co-PI for the CV for the co-PI. And then at the bottom of that page, it'll ask you for access to other resources. And this is where you can also detail, oh, we have access to DOE resources, or we have no resources at all. We have some a local compute on our campus, but it's not large enough for the work we want to do. That's why we're here at ACCESS. Oh, we do have this DOE award, but it's separate from the work we're going to do here with ACCESS, and there's a little bit of details just so we know it's understanding. After you do that, then you'll see a list of all the resources, and they're not all captured here because the page is so long. But we'll say in this example, we were going to ask for 20 million hours on the Open Science Grid. And then I put a little note that why we were asking for that, because all the code is serial code, and this will run well on this resource. Okay, if you choose a resource that has a required storage resource to go with it, say for example, the PSE Bridges 2 or the SDSC Expanse machine, you'll select the compute resource, and then it will remind you that you also have to put something in for storage. And they work hand in hand usually as your work directories on the computational resource. Oh, okay, so we've had a successful submission. This will repeat on your screen. It'll show you sort of in summary everything that you submitted. Everything is in place. You're really good to go. This is wonderful. It gives you a grant number to refer to. Then you would also see on your manage allocations on your ACCESS Allocations page under My Projects, you will see that you have this there. Now let me note there's a possibility to edit it after it's been submitted. But if you edit it, it's going to mark it as incomplete because the system is going to say, I don't know what changes are being made, and there could be something changed that would make the proposal incomplete. So it's incomplete at this time. Anybody from your team that's able to revise this, that could be an allocation manager, could be co-PI, could be PI. If the change is made or an edit is made, you need to save it again and submit it again. Not that it's going to be two submissions there. It'll just submit the newest version and you'll be back good. If you don't save and submit, it'll be an incomplete state and we will not consider those for submission. So make sure if you do make a revision and you edit this, that you save and submit. And then next, you'll receive an email stating that you've made the submission and a little bit of detail, but you'll have this for your records if you need to reference this later with a concern or a question to the allocations team. And then just some deadlines. So we talked about the deadlines for the submissions. This current one opens December 15th through January 31st. The next one would open in June 15th through July 31st. We will review for this coming meeting in March with allocations starting April 1. In the summer, we will review in September with allocations starting October 1. On this page I list here is this information. There's more details about the deadlines and due dates. There's example proposals. So every meeting that we have with the review panel, we ask them if they see any example proposals. Did they read a proposal that was really, really good and could make an example proposal for others that are submitting to reference? We will, if we find these, we reach out to the PIs of those proposals. If we have their permission, we will go ahead and post them out there. So there's several out there within some of the different disciplines of science. So you may want to take a look at those as well. There's also a webinar out there about code performance and scaling. So if you haven't prepared a code performance and scaling document, you want to take a look at that about what we're really looking for. And it's fairly detailed with some questions and good material. So to have a look at that. And then there's more information about the review criteria and guidance and all that. So there's a lot more detail, font size, spacing, margins, all that for your documents. You don't want to get tripped up by that. So please have a look at that as well. And then really this last part is, why can a research request or a maximized request, these large research requests, why could they be reduced or rejected? So I've tried to touch on these as I presented earlier slides. So one would be poor or no scaling performance information. You just didn't do the testing. You didn't do it well. It doesn't run well. You want to make sure you've done the testing on the resource that you have you're requesting. And I know for say Stampede 3, that's not possible. But if you've tested on Stampede 2 or say Anvil or one of the other resources, and you believe this will work, but to show that you can actually use the codes on the resources and you can run them very efficiently. The other section is the non-disclosure of access to other resources. Again, we talk about transparency and being very open about the situation. I do have allocations on other resources, and here's why I'm going to use the access resource. That's wonderful. If you don't detail why the differences of the two, we have found this could cause a problem and a concern for the reviewers, because they say, well, it's the same work that we're seeing that they're doing on these other resources. Multiple requests from the same research lab. Maybe you have a couple postdocs submitting similar research with their advisor is all the co-PI, and we start to raise question, is this all should be really pulled into one proposal from the research team. Poor justification for the resources. We mentioned that earlier, that just a nice table breaking down this so it really matches what you've had in the sections 2, 3, 4 of your main document. The lack of description of the research team. Are you ready to make these runs? Do you have the experience to do these runs on these resources? Or if you don't tell us, then it could be a question. Oh, okay, they're asking for 4 million. That's not that large. But if this group is asking for 10, 20 million and they don't detail the research team, it's hard to say that that group would be ready to actually make use of a machine of this size. And then we talk about low productivity from a prior allocation and not detailed in the allocations report. So this sometimes comes up where the reviewers say, well, they've used 50, 60% of their prior allocation, but they're not detailed why they haven't been able to use it all. The reviewer sometimes will say, well, they're back asking for the same amount, but their history is not showing that they can use that amount. So maybe we should just award what they were able to use the prior year. And that may not work well for you, but without giving the transparency and the details in a progress report why it wasn't used, the reviewers are sort of stuck. Okay, and then lastly, questions and feedback. And here's where we would hope for any questions from you all. We can stop the recording and have questions afterwards. But if you have questions after the fact, at the bottom of the allocations access page, you can submit a ticket to help request form. Or if you have feedback about this lecture or anything about allocations and access, you can always submit feedback there for questions, concerns, and all. So I'm hoping this webinar was useful. If you have questions later, please send us a ticket or feedback, and we'll be happy to address those and get back to you. If we would like to have a more detailed discussion, we can have a Zoom session with any of you later about your concerns. So as you're preparing your proposals for submission, let us know if you have any questions. Otherwise, thanks for joining and have a great day.